Alright, what's up guys? Beastmaster here. I've got a real quick blast from the past for you. Today is Friday the 13th, 2012, and it is the 11-year anniversary of the first day of the gathering of the Juggalos way back in 2001. Friday the 13th and the 11-year birthday of Tales from the Lotus Pod, Dark Lotus. And on account of this anniversary, I'm going to read you guys an excerpt of a letter that I wrote to my best friend when I came back from the gathering. This was my first gathering ever, and I traveled all the way from Massachusetts to Toledo, Ohio, and the convention center gathering. It was 3 days, and on the very first day, now I'm going to read this shit to you. And originally I wrote this letter to a friend of mine who got me into ICP, Tommy B, on August 17th, 2001. It says, all right, first, the drive was over 30 hours from Boston to Toledo, and it was the second annual gathering of the Juggalos. It was the shit, and here's my recap of the experience of my first gathering, just going down memory lane style. All right, so on the first day, it was actually Friday the 13th, and my friend Patanka and I, we waited outside of the Seagate Convention Center with about 8,000 other Juggalos, and ninjas were spraying Fagel all over the place. Nobody gave a fuck at all. Every flavor you could imagine was being dumped and sprayed, even Red Pop, and that shit was staining, you know what I mean? Right off the bat, everybody was drooling at the bit to get Tales from the Lotus Pod. And I think that's the main reason why the merchandise line was ridiculously long the entire first day of the gathering. But I actually got in that line very quickly. I rushed into it. Tom Dubb was working the booth, as always. And I got my shit early so I can enjoy the gathering. And besides being one of the first 100 ninjas to get my hands on the Dark Lotus album, I also picked up Dog Beats, Basement Cuts, Cryptic Collection 2, and Ride and Dirty. And these are all brand new releases or virtually impossible to find up until this point. Very cool. I also got a copy of the Juggalo Show box set, which was ICP's radio show, and that was before the Jekyll Brothers came out. And it was aired at midnight in Detroit once a month for a short while, and that shit was mad expensive. Alright, so the way I felt, you know, I traveled all the way from the East Coast to spend 3 days in a place where Psychopathic was taking the time to host seminars for Juggalos. And I was really intrigued by that concept. So I made a point to attend as many seminars as I could. And the first one was the Morton's List seminar. And so I get in there, and I'm not going to explain what Morton's List is. You're going to have to wait for another video or go check out one of my other videos where I talk about it. But the first thing that happened was Jump Steady threw a few dice into the crowd, okay? And whoever caught them would win a free copy of Morton's List. Well, I caught one of those dice. And not only did I win a free copy of Morton's List, but I got it signed by Jump Steady, Tall Jess, and Nathan, who are the three creators of that game. And I got to actually talk with Jump Steady and Nathan for a little bit, and they were really cool. And, you know, at the end of the day, that was one of my highlights of the gathering. And they schooled us all in that seminar. I was wicked impressed. All right, so you guys remember the Juggalo Hall of Fame? That was fresh. It was this big wall that everybody tagged on the first gathering, and they actually brought it, put it up on the wall up high, and then put a bigger, newer one below it. And that was for this year's gathering. So I actually took a Magnum 44 marker and wrote my name real big on the wall right underneath the word Juggalo, and I drew a bat symbol. And later on, somebody else kind of wrote over my shit with an even bigger marker. But not before I was able to get my buddy Patanka to take some pictures of it, before it was completely, gone. And lastly, I've got just a little recap here of the first night performances of this gathering. Misery performed. And, you know, after him, I fought my way right up to the front for Twisted. And they played so many good songs, you know, shit that I thought I'd never hear live, like Old School Pervert, What the Dead Like. And, you know, that night, I fell asleep listening to Tales from the Lotus Pod for the first time in headphones. And this was just the beginning, and it was mad sensory overload. It was the shit, and this letter continues for the rest of the gathering, but I'm going to wait until tomorrow because, today is Friday the 13th, and this was my recap of Friday the 13th from 11 years ago at the gathering. Now, there is some other things that happened that I really don't want to get into, like the whole Misery's camp fighting with Psychopathic and getting booted from the gathering that night. He even came back on one of Jump Steady's albums and did a track with him. The guy's Jump Steady's brother-in-law, you know what I'm saying? Bygones be bygones. And, much love to Misery, and much love to Psychopathic for putting on the illest gatherings for over a decade. And 11 years ago was a life-changing experience for me when I went and saw my first gathering, to see like 8,000 juggalos all in one spot for the first time. And I don't care who you are, how old you are, or when your first gathering was. When you see that many juggalos in one place for the first time, it changes you. For the better or for the worse. It's really up to you. Kind of like being successful. All right, I'm Beastmaster, and I'll be back later. Peace.